As you travel on the road from Bangalore to Mysore, if you take a left past the Bidadi industrial area, you will come across a lush agricultural landscape. While agriculture as a way of life is disappearing around Bangalore city, partly because of groundwater decline, here agriculture appears to be thriving.
What we have found that over the last 20 years, farmers have basically moved away from the traditional crops, which is finger millet or ragi in local terms, and paddy, and moved on to other crops like sugarcane in the meanwhile, and from 2000 onwards, they started cultivating baby corn in large amounts.
But behind this thriving agriculture lies a more nuanced story. The water being used to grow crops here is really Bangalore's sewage.
ಈಗ ನಾವು ಬೇಬಿಕಾನು ಬೆಳೀತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ. ಹುಲ್ಲು ಹಾಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದು ಸೀಮೆ ಹುಲ್ಲುಗಳು ದನಗಳಿಗೆ ಅಷ್ಟು. ಈಗ ಇವು ಅಲ್ಲದೆ ಇನ್ಯಾವೂ ಇಲ್ಲ. ರಾಗಿ ಹಾಕಿದ್ರೆ ಏನು ಅಂತೆ ಇಲಕ್ಕೆ ರೋಗ ಹೊಡಿತದ್ರೆ, ಭತ್ತ ಹಾಕಿದ್ರೆ ಗೊನೆ ರೋಗ ಹೊಡಿತದ್ರೆ, ಏನು ಬೆಳೆಯೋಕೆ ಆಯ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ.
So our primary interest to begin with in the work was to see how the farmers are responding to changes in Bangalore. So basically how the farmers have been responding to changes in the water quality, the stream.
ಕಾರಣ ಈ ನೀರೊಂದು ನಮಗೆ ಈ ಕಚಡ ನೀರು ಬತ್ತಲೇ ಈ ಥರ ಆದದ್ದು ಅಷ್ಟಲ್ಲದೆ ಮೊದಲು 20 ವರ್ಷದಿಂದ ಈ ಥರ ಆಗಿರಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಈಗ ಈ ನೀರು ಗಟ್ಟಿಯಾಗಿ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಅಲ್ಲಿಂದ ಕೆಮಿಕಲ್ಲು ಮಿಕ್ಸ್ ಆಗಿ ಬರೋ ನೀರು ಕಾರಣದಿಂದ ಬೆಳೆಗಳು ಈ ಥರ ಆಯ್ತಾವ್ರೆ.
The Vrishabhavathy river originates in the city, in Bangalore city, and takes much of the city's domestic sewage and also the industrial waste from Peenya industrial area, and then part of it gets treated in the Vrishabhavathy Valley treatment plant, which is sitting downstream. It passes through the Bidadi industrial area, comes to the Bairamangala reservoir, and then farmers downstream of Bairamangala reservoir use the water for irrigation for their crops. What happens to baby corn is that much of the baby corn is procured by agencies from the city to which the farmers sell the baby corn.
ನೀರಿಗೆ ಇಳಿದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ಈ ನೀರಿಗೆ ಮೈ ಕಟ್ತಾ ಬರೋದು, ಕಾಲು ಕಟ್ತಾ ಬರೋದು ಅನ್ನೋದು, ತಿರುಗಿ ಹೋಗಿ ಡಾಕ್ಟ್ರ್ ತಾವು ಇಂಜೆಕ್ಷನ್ ತಗೊಬರೋದು, ಇದೇ ಥರ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ ರೈತರುಗಳು. ಈ ನೀರಿಂದ ಭಾರಿ ತೊಂದರೆ ಆಗೋದು.
So once we found that wastewater is being used to cultivate crops by farmers, so our interest shifted to the impact of water quality on the crops and as well as well-being of the farmers. So as a sample, we first tried to select the major crops that come from the area like baby corn and also milk and water, and test it for industrial waste contamination, which is basically heavy metals.
ಹಸುಗಳು ಏನು ಅವು ಕೂಡ ಈ ಒಂದು ಕಲುಷಿತ ನೀರು ಕುಡಿಯೋದು ಮತ್ತು ಅದೇ ಮೇವನ್ನು ತಿನ್ನೋದು, ಅದು ಒಳ್ಳೆ ಕ್ವಾಲಿಟಿ ಆದಂಥ ಹಾಲನ್ನು ನಮಗೆ ಕೊಡಲ್ಲ.
ನಮಗೆ ಈ ಕುಡಿಯೋ ನೀರು ಇಲ್ಲೇ ಬೋರ್ ಹಾಕಿ ಕೊಟ್ಟವ್ರೆ, ಅದು ನಾವು ಉಪಯೋಗಿಸ್ಕೋತೀವಿ ದನಗಳಿಗೆ, ನಮಗೆ ತೊಳೆಯೋಕೆ ಪಳೆಯೋಕ್ಕೆಲ್ಲ. ಈಗ ಕುಡಿಯೋಕ್ಕೆ ಅಂತ ಬೋರ್ ಹಾಕಿ ಒಂದು 6 ತಿಂಗಳಿಂದ ಈಚೆಗೆ ಫಿಲ್ಟರ್ ನೀರು ಮಾಡಿ ಕೊಡ್ತಾವ್ರೆ. ವ್ಯವಸಾಯ ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಏನಕ್ಕೆ ಬೆಳೆಸೋಕ್ಕಾಗಲ್ಲ, ಬೆಳೆಸೋಕ್ಕೂ ಆಗಲ್ಲ. ವ್ಯವಸಾಯಕ್ಕೆ ಕಷ್ಟ ಆಗಿರುವಾಗ ಬೇರೆ ಎಂತಕ್ಕೆ ಬೆಳೆಸೋಣ ಹೇಳ್ರಿ.
So what we have found is that for some villages and for some samples, some of the heavy metals were above the required standards. So that basically triggered us to probe the issue in much more detail and trace the trajectory of the contamination upstream to the city.
The kind of contamination we found in downstream villages, we suspected that this contamination is coming from Peenya industrial area. Now to understand, now to really quantify how much heavy metals or how much contamination is being generated from this industrial area, we selected 3 sampling sites on the stream which is coming from Peenya industrial area. First location is Chaudeshwari Nagar, second is Sumanahalli, and third is Bengaluru University. We measured the flow and we also collected samples every hour for 24 hours, and we estimated how much load of heavy metals or how much quantity of heavy metals every day is being released from Peenya industrial area. So once a sample arrives in the lab, we measure pH and conductivity using W2W instrument, and conductivity values, as you can see, is very high. It's 2 millisiemens per centimeter, indicating industrial pollution. So whatever filtrate we get, we add few drops of nitric acid in the filtrate and preserve the water sample. For these water samples which we have collected from Vrishabhavathy river, we measure both dissolved and total heavy metals. The heavy metals are measured using atomic absorption spectrometer instrument. In addition to heavy metals, in this lab we also measure fecal coliform levels in water samples. What we found was that during the night hours, there were peaks of chromium, peaks of lead, peaks of manganese which was released from the industrial area. Though V-Valley treatment plant was designed to handle 180 million liters of raw sewage per day, it was treating 130 million liters per day. Now, out of 130 million liters per day, 26 million liters it was getting from underground drainage network, and rest 104 MLD it was picking from the river itself. As the river itself contains illegal discharges of industrial effluents and plus domestic sewage, this has directly impacted the treatment efficiency of the V-Valley treatment plant, and that is why we see that the effluent quality does not meet the discharge standards.
Once we determined that neither domestic sewage nor industrial effluents were being adequately treated, the question became why. So we began to investigate the management and regulation of water pollution in the Vrishabhavathy catchment. The BWSSB is the agency that handles sewage in Bangalore, and they have been lagging far behind the rate at which Bangalore has expanded and the amount of sewage that is being generated. And their plants have also not operated very efficiently. They do not receive enough sewage from their underground networks because the networks are lagging behind in terms of being set up. Also, the networks have been clogged. And so, the study of the sewage treatment plant at Vrishabhavathy Valley showed that they were running under capacity because they were not getting enough raw sewage from their network. So the second question is related to industrial pollution. Why is there so much heavy metal in this river? The primary culprit here is clearly the industries that release their untreated effluents into the stream, especially at night. And this relates to the question of how well the Pollution Control Board is able to enforce emission norms on the industries that are upstream of this particular point. So the first problem is that KSPCB's monitoring, which is once a month, one grab sample, sometime during working hours, is simply not capturing the real presence of heavy metals, which as our work shows, happens typically at night. KSPCB's primary focus has shifted from monitoring of the water quality or environmental quality to processing applications for setting up and continuation of industrial activities, what they call the consent for establishment and consent for operation. The CFE and CFO processes, which generate also a big chunk of their revenues, have become the focus of all their activities, and so their staff spend somewhere between 70 to 90% of their time processing paperwork rather than actually inspecting industrial premises, actually taking water quality samples and enforcing the law. The second level problem is that they are not able to prosecute the violators. There are many legal bottlenecks in the system. The judicial system is slow, and a lot of their cases have failed, and much of that has to do with their inability to produce good quality evidence to back up their claims when they go to court to prosecute these violators. Out of 450 cases that have been filed by the KSPCB, only 150 have been decided, which shows the problem of the slow judicial process. But in the 150 that were decided, only 25 were won by the KSPCB and 125 have been lost. The way the KSPCB board is structured, the governing board contains a large number of bureaucrats who sit on the board ex officio. The irony here is that the citizen or the polluter, the person who is facing environmental pollution in the state, is simply not represented on the governing board of KSPCB. It is dominated by bureaucrats and dominated by industry representatives, municipal representatives, but nobody is actually representing the polluter. So there is a whole set of layers that leads to the dilution of this environmental regulatory process, starting from monitoring to enforcement to the governing structure of the board itself. The combination of these factors leads to the situation that we see behind us, which is a black river containing both industrial and domestic effluents flowing happily for years together.
A-Tree's research shows how weak regulation and inadequate monitoring are resulting in pollution entering the food system. Ultimately, the city's own pollution returns back to the people of Bangalore.